I, for various reasons, was dwelling on the Northman for a hot minute. Mostly because I was listening to a new Norse Magic and Beliefs video that came out. Is that the right one? Norse or Pagan Magic and Beliefs? Something like that. Whichever one, Thor Lipidar's channel. But anyway, I was listening to that, and then I was thinking about the Northman film for a hot second, and then I realized something as I was remembering moments in the Ulfar King initiation scene. And of course, you've got the entire premise, and because it's so interestingly woven, it's just like you have to see it by understanding that it is where it may have come from, or at least that's what the film may be kind of suggesting, right? Because I think the whole film is effectively suggesting, like, where Christianity screwed things up in deeper symbolism because of a completely different relationship you have to things like the rituals, right? Because a lot of it comes forth when seeing any ritual practice in the film, and understanding what is symbolically the purpose that they're doing these rituals, and they're not just cultists running around, right? Even though the argument can be made that Fjolnir's way of things might be a little bit more cultish. Granted, everything that you saw happen in that film is well within the norms of heathenry, with the exception of the sacrifice of innocent people. And I'm not even going there with that, because the initiation scene in question has nothing to do with that. What does it have to do with? Oh. Okay. So, King Orvindil is got a really serious abdominal wound from his last exploits in battle, enslaving. And so, because he knows, but anyway, that's not even a matter. That doesn't even matter. All right, so he's got this wound, and this wound is also kind of like a big reason why he's putting his son through the ritual. And you get introduced to this wound in the ritual scene when he unbandages his abdominal side. And then I'm realizing as I'm looking at the wound, I'm like, oh shit. That's another thing that Christianism would have done, right? It's just like he's got the Lance of Longinus stab wound in his abdomen. Okay, it's the same. It's pretty much in the same area as where Jesus was poked, right? And so, what does King Orvindil do to his son while they're both tripping on berserker mushrooms? Not in a berserker ritual, but we're talking about the same thing. We're talking about the same concoction, if you will. He takes his son's hand or finger and deliberately puts it in the wound to give him his soul code genetic activation on the Tree of Kings. Okay? So here, like, all the elements are there. You've got Dad as both a Jehovian and Jesus-like character at the same time, getting hung on the tree, and he sees his dad hung on the tree as he goes up the line of ancestors from Odin, from the ancestral Odin. The ancestral Odin, I do believe, existed. He's not Odin, the myth, but he is the ancestor who solidified the myth and brought the myth to personification. So all of those uneasy feelings that this film really gives you is flipping your relationship with the transubstantiation of the divine, right? Because here you're witnessing quite the adult rite of passage on a boy, and you're not used to seeing this kind of thing, having a child of that age being put through, even though it's in extraordinarily safe conditions for a scary and adult event, which is good for a human's personal development and mental health. What isn't good is invoking the child into fighting your battles for you. Avenge me, right? Perhaps the film could have built more purpose into that that expression. That you know, like, what precisely are you avenging? I mean, he was a good man. I guess, a good man who did good things for a whole lot of people is a great reason to avenge somebody. It's just like, just know that you remind people of my worth. Right? And that works for a living man as far as being an example of things, right? Putting somebody through that for a deity who is not a man, whom your father was not that deity, or your ancestor was not that deity. That's the old ass grift of the Pharaoh and all the others of the man god, etc. Right? And that's just to speak of the concept of the man god, who doesn't allow anybody else to be the man god, right? We're talking about the Atman, the Aton, the Ubermensch, Superman, right? All of these things. Right? So they made all of us, they projected guilt, shame, and fear. But honestly, it wasn't always guilt, shame, and fear. Sometimes it was about teaching you to project guilt, shame, and fear, and for you not to worry, because you're talking about a child, right? The child knows that he's innocent. Like, he didn't, he just found out about how serious the whole suffering of Jesus was. And oh my gosh, I feel awful, right? And that's why you need the original sin thing, right? Because, there's original sin, and then there's new sin. New sin is making a mockery of what God's Son did, right? And the great problem is that we took the story of Jesus, and then we put the mythos of the Christ on it, and that's where we fucked up. There is no Iesus Christ. right, as far as a historical figure. There's the Aesos that you've heard of, um, but sources are beginning to show, let's just say I'm not prepared to repeat what I've heard on another person's podcast yet, because I have to double check those sources. But let's just say I think he's got the receipts, and I don't have to like it. I don't have to agree with it, but I do have to acknowledge that it is. And I have to be sure of that. I'm paying attention, is my point. So, the Christ is, that's a whole spiritual alchemy process of becoming like the golden child, right? You know, having the golden divine light body, etc., all that stuff that unlocks all your fun latent abilities that are represented in your unrealized DNA. They call it junk DNA. It's really your unrealized is one word. I'll find a more appropriate, more magnificent word than unrealized for it. I think many people have, because that's been a big part of the conversation, right? You know, anybody who becomes a little bit psychic is just like, ooh, I've got more DNA activation. Yeah, you do. All right. So anyway, so yeah, you've got ancient practices that would have been animistic understandings of reaching the Christ without, but that would not have been the name for it, obviously, and it wouldn't have been to be in the nature of specifically the figure from history that was mythologized of Jesus Christ, right? What we have is a different idea with the origin of a particular cult. Right, because I think it's foolish to say that there wasn't some sort of guy who existed that these gospels were based on. I'm just saying that I am free from believing that the Bible is anything fucking divinely special. I think that it's a very, very bad take on a very, very narrow sliver of history that may not even be the most consequential events of history. Like, to me, the Bible is less important, not more important than ever. It's still important, it's just less important. But it's still important. But then again, you only realize its importance once you actually pick up a tiny bit of Hebrew and a tiny bit of Aramaic, and then you'll be all right. Then it'll like, once you get a little bit of it and you start putting context together, you're gonna realize you need a whole lot more if you really want to get into it. And I promise you, most people, they just don't want to. They'll do a little bit, they'll spend a little bit, and they'll spend like maybe a week. It might be a thing. It might be a thing that they do for like a month, right? And then they're going to move on, most likely, right? It'll be like, kind of like a quote, phase. Like a phase of the moon, right? It's just a phase. 9 months later. But anyway. So, all right, truck's not here yet. So I gotta get to work. My point is that there was a pre-established, before this character that I think is more nefarious than people give credit for came onto the scene. There is a pre-established mythos that was understood primarily through solar cults. I think it's a solar cult thing, which is why there's the gold involved, and people aren't sitting right because they want to achieve the gold body, but they haven't gone through the blackening yet, or they are stuck in the blackening, right? And so all of those feelings you get, Christianity gives you this spirit of the gold light body, the Holy Spirit, if you will, but then they drop the ball by not giving it to you, by not feeding it to you, only having you be polite and behaved and sinless, and all that stuff, and just hold on to that until death and you're solid, right? And it doesn't help you because it's taken your drive of achievement out of it. It's made you neurotic in making sure every little finger wag pleases the Lord. And that's not what any deity wants for any mortal. It's not what Creator, which is above the deities, if you understand the way I work. Some people call it the higher force, that's above the deities. That's not what they want either. But we like to believe all sorts of crazy shit. All right, I'll catch you guys later.